All right, good evening. I'd like to call the regular City Council meeting for the City of Temple City to order for August 15th, 2023. Madam City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Here.
Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Here.
Mayor Mann?
Here. Tonight for the invocation, we again have the pleasure of having Pastor Kelty of Community of Christ Church, located at 5851 Temple City Boulevard, to provide the invocation. Please rise and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
It's always such a pleasure for me to come here, so I thank you for the continuing invitation. Our Heavenly Creator, who is the source of all things good, we, a few of your children, would come into your presence today to ask that all those present might be with your Spirit and with this council, that they would open their minds to that Spirit in order for them to better be able to do those things that would bring this community, those things which it needs to make it an even better community in the future. We would also pray for the staff, that they too might be in wisdom, both individually and corporately, to bring those business, to do those things of business which indeed make this a better city. Allow both council and staff to work in harmony, thus making this Temple City a place to be proud of. And finally, for all those of the audience here gathered, they too may, through their individual and corporate efforts, will leave this city a better place for future generations. We say this, thank you, and amen.
Amen. For our pledge, I'd like to ask our city manager, Mr. Brian Cook, to lead.
Thank you, Mayor. Please face the flag of the United States of America and repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Tonight, we have a very special ceremonial presentation, which is the recognition of Temple City High School Skills USA. And just to give a little bit of an introduction, tonight we are recognizing 4 outstanding students from Temple City High: Angela Mo, Phoenix He, Stephen Ma, and Jonathan Zell, from Temple City High School Skills USA Group, for their hard work, commitment, and dedication toward becoming a skilled professional. Skills USA California is a career technical student organization. Its main goal is to prepare students to be job ready at school or college. The organization itself has over 30,000 student members in California. California has 6 regions, and Temple City is in Region 3, which consists of high schools in Los Angeles County and Ventura County combined. There are slightly over 100 different competitions. Angela, Phoenix, Stephen, and Jonathan competed in the Health Knowledge Bowl, a team competition, and for 2 years in a row, won the California State Championship twice. They are the 3rd best team in the country for the Health Knowledge Bowl. And tonight I also want to recognize and invite first Mr. Garcia, who has been leading this wonderful group of students. So at this time, Mr. Garcia and the students, if you don't mind coming to the front of the podium, I'd like to invite you to maybe say a few words about this wonderful group of students we have here tonight. And afterwards, we have some certificates we'd like to present to them.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite to come here. This group of students, these 4 students, have really captured the imagination of our high school and our community, and they challenge themselves to be better than they than they thought the first time around. When I say the first time around, they were juniors at Temple City High School when they joined the organization. They chose the competition they wanted to be in. They wanted to excel in health knowledge and get into a medical profession. And to go to the national championships, you have to win the state championship. It is state champion against state champion at the nationals. And it's 52 total because they include Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So they went up against 51 other schools, total, possibly. And they finished 6th place last year. And they were not happy. This group of kids, they were not happy. They came up to me and they told me, Coach, we're going to do it again. We want to get on the podium. We really want to do it again. And I sat down and said, are you sure? That means you got to win the state title a second time. That doesn't happen. They said yes. So we actually put together their team again for a second time and 2 other teams that wanted to do it. We entered 3 teams in the regionals, and they all made it to the state. And at the state finals, we finished 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at the state championships, with, again, them winning their 2nd state title and going to the nationals. And at the nationals, they finished 3rd. They ended up on the podium receiving a medal. They're the 3rd best team in the country at health knowledge for all high schools. So my hat's off to them. Jonathan will be they're all seniors, they all graduated. Jonathan will be attending Brown University. The other 3, Phoenix He, Angela Moe, and Stephen Ma, all UCLA. So that's my little blurb about it. We have a lot of other students that compete regionally and in the state. In fact, we're so successful, we are that school now, if you know what I mean. We're that school that when we walk into the competition, oh, Temple City's here. We don't have much of a chance anymore. So we've gotten to that point. We're really good at what we do. So you guys want to come up and say anything? No. Okay. Thank you for entertaining
Thank you,
us.
Mr. Garcia.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Garcia?
Do you also teach at the school, or besides doing this, or what do you?
Yes, I started at Temple City High School in 2017. I was hired as the sports medicine teacher and the athletic trainer after school. And one of the things I told Jennifer last year when she was the principal, that when I come over, you need to start Skills USA. And so she did. And so I teach a full load of students for sports medicine, and then I take those kids that have taken the 3 courses and are now in clinical practicum, and they work with me after school to do physical therapy, emergency first aid. They're the kids that run on the field with me for football injuries. They learn emergency management. These are medical professionals of the future.
Good.
So that's what I teach. And
Congratulations
then all
to you.
these kids in my class, the good majority of them joined Skills USA for competition.
Thank you.
All right, well,
Thank you.
yeah. Any questions or comments from council? Okay. All right, well, I know Jonathan and Phoenix are here with us tonight. So I'd like to invite both of you up to the front. We have certificates of recognition we'd like to present you. And I'd also like for council to join me in presenting this and also get a photo with them at the center.
Can you get up here? You have to thank Mr. Garcia. Thank you so much. Great work.
Coach Garcia is much too modest. His responsibility At the movies with boyfriends? No. Senior in high school, I wasn't doing that. When's your next school board meeting?
Not for another month, I think. I just added it all. Right.
I was just wondering when they're.
There's an article I saw online that they have something about the school districts and cities who are part poor, which are trying to their schools to use facilities. And they usually bring up, yeah, but they don't do it here.
Do you remember how long we tried to use that? We even said, why not try even St. Luke?
Yeah.
There's a nice school there.
I don't know. I'm gonna bring it up at the next meeting.
You know what, they want a lot of their facilities.
So thank you, Miss Peggy Cole, for catching this. But in the audience is also Miss Jackie Lee, who was the recipient of that large Southern California Edison Scholarship. I hope you received the certificate that we sent you. So we're glad you're here with us today. And so the fact that you walked in and you were recognized, so we have to publicly recognize you.
Wow.
So congratulations to you as well. All right. We have wonderful students in Temple City, and so thank you so much for coming tonight. We are so proud of all of you. And before the city attorney gives me a hard time, which is very well deserved, I do. Usually we have two attorneys that reminds me of the things that I should be asking him to report out on our closed session item that the council met earlier at closed session at 6:30 p.m. So, Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that was the 6:30 special meeting. The council adjourned into closed session at 6:39. We're briefed on both item A on potential litigation and item B on the conference with labor negotiator. The council was briefed and discussed both items, but no reportable action was taken pursuant to the Brown Act. And the council then adjourned the meeting at 7:32 p.m. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. And before we move on to public comment, never mind. We'll move on to public comment. So for the council will now hear items not listed on the agenda. Do we have anyone who would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. Consent calendar is next. All items on this may be approved in a single motion unless there's any items council would like to poll or comment on.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any objections? All right, seeing none, may we have a roll call vote?
Sorry, Mayor. There's one correction on the warrant. Which item is that? It's for the fiscal year 22-23. The check numbers were incorrectly listed. It was listed at 60792 to 60796. It should be 60792 to 60793. It should be listed as 60796. I apologize for that error.
So I'll restate my motion to approve consent calendar with that correction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a amended motion and a second. Any objections? Seeing none, and again, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Director Paragus. All right, could we have a roll call vote on the motion, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. Next, we move to the public hearing. There is none. Unfinished business, there is none. New business, item 10A, introduction of ordinance number 23-1073, amending section 2-1-2 of the Temple City Municipal Code pertaining to city council compensation in light of Senate Bill 329. We have an introduction to this item from our city manager, Mr. Falk.
Thank you, Mayor Mann and members of the council. Before you tonight is the staff's recommendation to adopt and read first reading and title and further reading of the ordinance to amend the municipal code related to the changes that came from Senate Bill 329 regarding council compensation going forward. At our last council meeting, we had a very thorough discussion with you, an update, and staff presented the information regarding the reasons why this legislation was presented and passed and approved by the governor. Essentially, this is a one-time chance to reset some of the council salaries. And again, just as a reminder, these council salaries do not happen retroactively. They happen prospectively at the next election, which would be March of 2024. So for those who are seated in March of 2024, this would become in effect then, not now, and not retroactively. Just as a reminder, that this is really set towards some of the adjustments that needed to be made. You had made an adjustment prior. This is an additional amendment to that in terms of the ordinance. This seems, and additionally to, on a go-forward basis, just as we brought this forward, as the city attorney and the city staff brought this forward to you, future compensation adjustments would be brought forward with staff as well. This is very much in line with what many other cities around the state are doing. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you. Are there any council questions for this item at this time?
Not really, but I just think that perhaps the city manager can mention when was the last time. Well, I think he's not.
Mr. City Manager, we have
Sorry,
a question.
Sorry about that, Mary, council member you.
No, that's okay. Perhaps the city manager can mention the last time we had an adjustment.
Oh, thank you, council member you. Prior to the prior adjustment, the last adjustment was in 2012. So this essentially brings you back up with the cost of living increases or inflation adjustments that you would have had going forward. This ensures that the last inflation adjustment, which was last year, or the last inflation increase and CPI increase, this essentially catches you up to that. So you, at this point, as a city, you're as for a council, you're caught up with all of the COLA or inflation adjusted CPI adjustments that any other agency would be following.
Yeah, based on what was approved by the council back then.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions?
No, that was it. Just
Okay.
to wonder.
All right, so we'll open the public comment for this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment. Are there any final council comments? Councilmember Sternquist? Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
No question, thank you.
Councilmember Yu, Scar?
Nope.
No? Okay, well, I think we had this item on before and it was discussed extensively. So I'm ready for a council motion if there is anyone who would like to make one.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that we introduce for first reading by title only and waive further reading of ordinance number 23-1073, amending the Title 2, Chapter 1, Section 2-1-2, expenses and compensation of this Temple City Municipal Code, and schedule the second reading of ordinance number 23-1073 for September 5th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? All right, seeing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. All right, next we move on to item
Mayor?
10.
May I read
Oh,
the
yes.
title?
I apologize.
Thank
Yes,
you.
please read the title of the ordinance.
Thank you. Ordinance number 231073, an ordinance of City Council of City of Temple City, California, amending Section 2-1-2, expenses and compensation of Chapter 1, City Council of Title 2, administration of the Temple City Municipal Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move on to item 10B, employer medical health benefit contribution amount to the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act. Minimum health benefit amounts to employees, retirees, and council members. And we'll start with Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Mann and members of the council. I'll do a brief introduction and I'll turn it over to our Administrative Services Director and City Treasurer. Before you tonight is a series of resolutions that essentially do two things. One, they address the compliance with CalPERS in terms of adjusting our medical benefits to, one, be in compliance with what CalPERS is looking for in the minimum amounts that we can contribute, but also, two, just as importantly, actually creating a second tier for retiree medical benefits, otherwise known as OPEB, other pension employee benefits. As we've discussed many times, those numbers have gone up significantly over the last few years. This is a substantial attempt at making an adjustment to control some of those costs. For example, if any employee is hired on or after October 1st of this year, or any council member is seated on or after, new council member is seated on or after October 1st of 2023, they would go into this Tier 2 plan. It would still be a benefit, but a 50% reduction in what the current retirees would receive. Why do we have to approach it this way? Because the current employees and the current annuitants have an expectation of what those benefits would be when they entered into employment. When they entered into employment, there are certain terms and conditions of which this follows that they would be expected to get. But what we can change is for the employee or the council member or any future retiree of what that new benefit would be going forward when they retire from the city. And the resolutions that you have in front of you both are technical in the sense of what PERS requires in order to create the second tier, which is essentially laid out in some of the tables before you. No employee or unrepresented employee or council member is losing any type of medical benefits. But again, if you are hired on or after October 1st, you would still be receiving those same benefits as an active member of in active employment, but once you retire, you would go into this second tier. With that, I'll turn it over to our City Administrative Services Director and City Treasurer for any other additions.
One change that we did make, in addition to receiving the second tier retiree benefits, we are requiring a 5-year vesting with the city. The new employee or new council member would have to be with the city, or even rehires would have to start over again and would need to work with the city 5 consecutive years.
Didn't we used to have a vesting requirement, I thought?
CalPERS had one. In order to receive their benefits, the employee had to be vested 5 years into CalPERS. So they could have a combination of 2 years with one city, 1 year with one city, and then 2 years with us in CalPERS, and they would be vested with CalPERS.
And now we're changing it just for us, it's got to be 5
Correct, yes.
years. We never had a vesting?
Never.
Not a vesting for employment.
For employment TC.
With Temple City.
Right.
And I think that from our perspective, that's a more appropriate measure to actually be vested here, so that we're giving a generous benefit for time spent and earned here. The employee should be contributing back with time vested here as well.
Does that have to be consecutive, or let's say
Consecutive.
2 years, they leave for a year, come back.
It
They
would have
would
to
need
be,
to be
It would
consecutive.
it would have to be,
Starts over?
Yes.
it'd have to be consecutive, yes, sir.
Yes.
Oh, so it starts
Makes
over.
sense.
So, in the current system, not having the vesting, let's say they work 4 years, 364 days somewhere else and work 1 day here in Temple City. Theoretically, if they retire, they will receive medical benefit from Temple City. What would that amount be?
That would be under, if you go, that would be,
For current employees.
for current employees, it would be 100% of the medical premium for the individual employee
Meaning that from Temple City.
from Temple City.
Yeah,
So
I
whatever
just
that,
wanna
that
make
would,
that distinction, because why we have to make this change is because with the current system, we're responsible 100%, even if the person spend 1 day in Temple City.
That's
right.
correct.
I just want.
I think this is a very reasonable and equitable change in terms of what we're providing. That's a very generous benefit to provide, period, but this adjustment, we're trying to, as an employer, if we're trying to attract individuals to come here, this is a benefit package that people do look at, but it has to come with a trade-off with the employee making an investment here at the city for a period of time. And 5 years is more than reasonable period of time for vesting.
And that coverage actually goes with the retiree for the rest of his or her life.
Yes, for the rest of his or her life, and then what happens with our current annuitants now is most of them go into a Medicare Part B program, or a Medicare supplement program that CalPERS also administers, which is a lower amount, which is quite frankly advantageous to us as a city financially. And we want to see these people meet the ripe old age of Medicare eligibility and well beyond. But that does lower our cost as an employer going forward. So I don't know if there's anything else that you felt you needed to add.
The only other thing is for current and active employees. Our current employees receive a $600 opt-out, meaning they don't take our medical insurance, so they get a monthly opt-out amount of $600. The new, should the council approve all their resolutions, the new amount would be $500 for employees who begin on or after October 1st. Those are basically the changes through these resolutions.
All right. Anything else?
That's it, unless council has other questions.
Okay. Any council questions? Councilmember Viscara?
No questions.
Councilmember Yu?
No questions.
Councilmember Sternquist?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Did you stated currently they get the cash option of six something, you said?
$600 per month.
I'm looking at the report, it says 822, am I looking at the right?
Oh, that's a supplemental optional benefit
Oh, okay.
that prior to 2016, staff was eligible to receive $822 a year if they don't use it for premiums, additional premiums for dependents.
Mhm.
Now we're doing away, that's another issue we're doing away with, is the 6 employees that currently receive the 822 are grandfathered in, and any future employees that, whether they've been here before 2016, will not be eligible for the cash value. They will be eligible for the $1,744, I believe, or $1,722, towards additional premium towards their dependent premiums. That will continue.
That's a year?
Thank you.
She said a year. That's all they
Why
can
would
get.
somebody take that option?
It's not much.
Are they getting insurance
If they're
someplace else?
employee only, or are you talking about opt-out or the supplemental benefit? Opt-out would be they're getting maybe another insurance through their spouse,
Mhm.
as some of our employees who get the optional
I
benefit.
thought it might be that.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. We will now open up the public comment. Does anyone wish to speak to the council on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment and move on to final council questions or comments. Councilmember Viscara?
No further questions.
No comments?
Or-
Councilmember Yu?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I think maybe with minor details, essentially the new proposed medical benefit is really the same as current, with the exception of post-employment for the retirees. And I just want folks to understand that for most cities, this OPEB, or post-employment benefits, is a big liability down the road. So that's why the city is taking this active step in at least limiting future liabilities. Is not something that will immediately realize the benefit of, but down the road. But I think the city also has been very careful in not changing any benefits that our employees are currently getting. Because as a public employee myself, you know, we before we take on an employment, we look at the total package, right? Vacation, salary, benefit, retiree. I mean, so that, you know, that's why the city, I think, is not really changing that. But that would be something that for our future employee to take into consideration before they come here. So I think it's a fair proposal, because we are maintaining current system, but yet help us to be financially prudent and responsible for future city finance. So I think it's a fair system. I think I can
Mayor?
support that.
Mayor Mann, may I add one?
Yes.
One thing I did neglect, as Council Member Yu is pointing out, I want to thank our bargaining unit for working with us in this process.
Absolutely, yeah.
as well. This is a meet and confer process, and thank you to the bargaining unit and to top management and everybody else for working with us through this process to bring the proposal that you have before you today.
All right. Thank you. Anything else, Councilmember?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sternquist?
Yeah.
No? Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Just to get back to my original question about the vesting. So I know in the report, it doesn't really refer to continuous 5-year periods. Does it say that in the resolution somewhere, or just to
It
be
does not.
clear, do we need to say that? Because I think might be a little ambiguous, or maybe that's covered just by general law principles, but
That
when
would
you say
be,
5 years, I mean, I could anticipate somebody saying, well, I was there for 2, left for a while, came back for 4 more. I'm technically there for more than 5 years. I don't see anywhere in here where it says it must be consecutive 5 years to vest. And I defer to our city attorney to maybe agree or disagree, but I didn't see anything in the resolutions.
there is nothing in the resolution that speaks of the continuous, so
I think
And-
we should now.
I kind of think it maybe should, since that seems to be the intent. That
Has that ever
it is
happened?
It's the
absolutely an
intent.
intent.
I don't know.
Yes.
That is, but to Council Member, Mayor Pro Tem Chavez's point, that is absolutely the intent. You essentially, regardless of prior service, you reset on when you re-enter. Similar,
In fact, I don't see anything in the resolution that even says anything about the 5-year period. I'm assuming it's in there somewhere, but I didn't see it.
Susan, do you, in the
No.
resolution, does it?
No, it does not say that.
It should say it.
So Greg, can we make that change in the resolution tonight?
I'm looking to do that now.
No, I just bring it up because we've been talking about it tonight, and it's in the staff report, but I don't see it anywhere in any resolution that we're passing.
In-
You can just
I
assume
think the
it.
table in the resolution.
Is there a
does say
table in
that.
the resolution? I don't see-
Yeah, for example, I'm looking
Where
at
is that at?
page,
What page are you on?
I'm looking at page 6 of the resolution.
Page 6. But
Yeah.
that- Is that
So
but that's
that
the report though, isn't it, Vince?
Attachment E, for example.
Page 6 I'm looking at, but that's, are you talking about, say, page 6 of the report?
No, page 6 of the
the-
attachment
Oh.
E.
Attachment E?
Yeah, at the bottom of the page there, it
Let's
says
see.
5-year full-time employment with the city vesting. However, I think Mayor Pro Tem, you're
Attachment-
right. It
attachment-
didn't really spell out how the 5 years actually vested here or some. or could be continuous or not.
So then, to read that into the record, in resolution number 23-5693, in the chart, employees hired on or after October 1, 2023, the vesting should instead read 5 consecutive years of full-time employment with the city.
Oh, are you looking at on page, are you looking at subsection B, hire date on or after October 1st, 2023?
Yes.
Employee must be employed full-time with the city a total of 5 years. So you want to change the wording on that, is that where you're? Yeah, I think,
And then on attachment F, resolution 23-5694, the vesting for elected on or after October 1st, 2023 would also say 5 consecutive years of service with city, either via election to 2 terms or service of a partial term and then election to a term. That way, the benefit for the elected is the same as the benefit for the employee, which, Ms. Pargas, is what is required by law, is that those two be the same. Is that correct? Or at least no greater for the elected
Correct,
than
yes.
for the employee.
Oh, actually, that brings up a good point. So if a council member get elected to a term, so serves 4 years, and then he or she step down or not get elected,
They're ineligible.
and then come back for another year, and then would he or she then lost the first 4 years?
Based on
Yes.
this, because they can't have a greater benefit than the employees, if we need the employees to be 5 consecutive years, then the council would also have to be 5 consecutive
So I was
years.
just thinking that in order to apply the same standard, I think for an employee to decide to stay here 5 years, it's probably, or leave, stay and then leave and come back, is probably somewhat under his or her control. But council, you really don't have that option. So I was thinking that to apply same standard, because the council really does not have that option. I mean, because they get voted in, they get voted out, right? So I was thinking that if we allow the council to have this continuous 5-year service, then we should, and I'm just putting it out there for the rest of council to consider, we should also consider our staff having that same benefit of this continuous. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know what. At least that's my opinion.
I'm not sure what you're saying, or I kind of lost you there.
Be-
So are you proposing that for city council members, it should be different than from
No,
employees?
I'm saying it should be the same, but.
But it is the same.
Right now it's the
Or
same.
yeah.
But right now, so if somebody got on one term and did not serve the next term, well, as a council member, you lose out,
Right.
right? But I do think it's healthy for council anyways, to allow council to serve one term and then leave and come back because of whatever reasons. And so I am proposing,
Well, they still can do that, but let's say they run again and they lose. So they've only served one term. Let's say the next 2 years later, they decide to run again and they're elected.
right,
Then
The clock
under the
is
current,
running
under the current, the
for you.
clock starts rerunning.
right.
And but they still have to get 5 years in, so they would
Right.
still have to get another term in.
So you
Well,
must
I
serve
don't
2
see
terms at
I don't
every
really see the
time.
unfairness of that, really. I think if we were to change that, then it would be unequal treatment between council members and
Well,
staff.
that's why I'm proposing in order for allow future council members, we're not really speaking for any one of us here. For future council members to have the benefit of serving one term, leaving for a couple of years and come back, we should also allow our staff to have the same.
Councilmember Yu, that would be considered
We can do that.
an advantageous benefit system than the employees. So you would, if you want to go that route, you would also have to provide that for the employees.
That's what I'm proposing.
So no consecutive 5 years.
That's what I'm putting on the table.
Well, that's what I asked before, is the 5
You can
years
do that.
be
You can absolutely.
consecutive or not consecutive?
You can make that choice to be consecutive or not consecutive.
But I think what's important is that no matter what we do, we clarify both Resolution 5693 and 5694. So I'll leave the policy decision to the council. If you go consecutive, it will say 5 consecutive years on both. Otherwise, we will amend it to say 5 total years on both. And then that way there
And you
won't
know
be
what-
ambiguity.
And Greg, I think you're gonna have to also amend Exhibit 1, paragraph 6, paragraph B
This would be the,
on page 4. If
the
it-
side letter, yes.
Yeah, the side letter, where it talks about, again, employee must be employed full-time with the city a total of 5 years.
Yes, we would have to do all 3.
So tonight, I guess we're being asked, or at least it's now through discussion, does that mean consecutive, or does that mean non-consecutive,
Consecutive or total?
total, or non-consecutive, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
And the intent, I think, of, well, with the way we started off, if I heard correctly, was it'd be a consecutive 5 years. But again, that's, from what I'm hearing, that's a policy decision that we can make.
That is a policy decision the council can make.
yeah, so I propose we consider total instead of consecutive, because I think we all understand it's difficult and outside our control necessarily to stay on consecutive terms. Whereas for staff is different, they just need to decide not to go anywhere. So that's my,
Aren't you saying that it has to be that way for the employees too?
It's gotta be one way or the other,
Yes.
for everybody.
I think
Right.
what Councilmember Yu is suggesting, if I understand correctly, is that we don't make it consecutive so that it's equal
yes.
across the board.
For
right?
both
It's
parts.
simple, it's either total or consecutive.
Right,
Right.
but it has to be
Okay.
the same for council member
Yeah.
and staff.
I'm sorry, I don't agree, I think it needs to be consecutive.
Regardless of staff or council.
Well, if-
I'm this, of
Go
the
ahead,
same idea that it should be consecutive. I don't think you gain anything by not having staff have consecutive years of service. I think it encourages staff to think a lot about whether or not they're going to stay with the city or leave, even if you have the possibility of maybe coming back. I think as council, council members, it's always, you're always up for reelection pretty much. I mean, that's something going in that, if you hopefully do a good enough job, you'll stay on for consecutively for another term. But I much prefer employees and council stay at consecutive years.
Well, I think if we go with the initial rationale for the thought process of 5 consecutive years is that we're giving something the employees they need to give back, then the argument for consecutive makes sense, I think. I understand what Vince is saying. I think at this point, I think I would respectfully disagree with that and keep it consecutive on both sides. And, as far as the council members, and of course, yeah, they run for election, they lose. There's a lot of other implications from that, obviously, but, hopefully, at least they'll know that going in, that if they intend to vest with the benefits the city provides, that they're gonna have to stick around for a while, same as everybody else. So, I don't have a problem with that. So, I would go along with the consecutive 5 years, I think.
So just for my own sake of clarity, if we stick with consecutive and we look at, say, a potential future council member that gets elected, they would essentially, in order for this 5-year vested to apply, the lowest bar that they would have to meet is 2 consecutive terms of 4 years each.
Correct.
Or
Is that correct?
or one term, and then they could retire after 2 years of their second term. They'd still vest, right? Because that would be 6 years.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you. I didn't even think about that scenario.
Or in the case of.
Maybe appointed?
Yes,
in the middle of a
council
term?
member who resigns and a new council member is appointed to fill that seat. as long as they serve a year plus 1 day, and then they get elected, they will have had 5 years.
For some reason, I have in the back of my memory that it was always 5 years, but what is CalPERS then? Is it 5 years?
CalPERS is 5 years.
So as far as the council members were considered, for us to vest with CalPERS, we did have to win 2 elections or serve.
It didn't have to be
one term plus another
consecutive.
part of another one.
It wouldn't have to
Didn't
be
have to be
consecutive.
consecutive.
Yes.
But it
Okay.
does not need to be
Oh, okay. All right.
consecutive.
Yeah.
And
You know, obviously the council can vote what the council wanted, but I do think that the bar is set
too high, personally, for council members. Because I don't know, while the current council member here all have been voted in consecutively, but I also know of personally council member who couldn't serve because of various reasons. And they served the term faithfully, 1 term, and then leave the council. And I want to make sure that it would not discourage them from coming back from a second term, because maybe that's all they can serve is 2 terms separate from each other. But because we have to treat council member and staff the same, that's why I'm proposing that we keep them separate, but obviously that's my own opinion.
I think the benefit for the council members is outweighed by the disadvantage by not having it consecutive for the staff. That's the way I feel about it. I don't think by providing an extra benefit for 5 members of a city council I think that's outweighed by the disadvantage of not having it consecutive for the staff of the city. I think that's the more important. And since they do have to be the same, I would default to the 5 consecutive because of the importance of having those people here as working for the city.
You think it would disadvantage employees? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm
If
saying
we
that,
went consecutive?
I'm saying the advantage to the city of having them work 5 consecutive years before they vest is an advantage for us,
I think so.
because we're keeping people around.
Yeah.
And that's the
Exactly.
idea. And to change that because we want to take care of perhaps future council members who either don't want to run for 2 terms or can't win 2 terms, I don't know, I don't think that's an even swap to me.
Yeah, you know, of course, we're all entitled to our own opinion.
No, and I respect your opinion.
I actually
understand
don't
what you're saying.
think that for somebody, I think serving the city 5 year is the bar we want to set. But whether it's 5 year continuous, 3 years here, work in another municipality somewhere else and come back, I don't see that as a disadvantage. As a matter of fact, I would encourage people to do so because they gain a new insight when they work for different municipalities or private sector for that matter. And the fact of the matter, in my view, having put in the years totally is important because I seen people come and go in my own employment. They leave the county, go work for a city, and come back, or vice versa. And I don't see people should be penalized because keeping people in one place, while there's certain advantage, but there's also other advantages in having people seeing the other side of the world, seeing how other cities are run, or maybe go work for the county.
But aren't you presuming that those people are leaving and going to work in a similar position? What if they leave and go work for private industries doing something completely different? And so now they want to come back to the city. It's not really an advantage to the city because they didn't learn anything necessarily that's going to help them now working for the city again. So,
Well,
I mean, that's a big presumption, I think, to make.
yeah, but if they are no longer qualified, then we should not be rehiring.
Well,
them.
that's a whole different
Right.
story, I think.
Right, so if we rehire them, the presumption is that they are qualified for whatever percentage we hire them back to, so.
Why don't we just change it to 4 years? That would solve both problems. It would solve Vince's problem and it would solve the issue? I mean, what's so magical about 5 years? Is that,
We would have to go
Probably
back to
first.
TCA
oh,
to get that approved.
well, I don't know why they would
I mean,
disagree with it.
But we still need to
Why
confer
would
with
they
them.
disagree with 4 years, and that's
They would-
more of a benefit?
Well,
But we have some discrepancies as it is between employees and council members when you look at the health insurance benefit anyway, right, Susan?
No, it's all equal for active.
I mean, council's
No.
not able to
No, that's not
take
true.
Oh, the opt-out?
$600 or whatever if we opt out, so,
It's only TCA.
yeah.
So, well, council cannot have a better benefit than employees, not the other way around. So it doesn't have to be equal between employees and council members. It's just the council members cannot have a better benefit than the employees.
Right, but we don't opt into that benefit that they get at all.
Right, only TCA has that benefit.
but it's still our-
Non-representative don't have that benefit either.
But
As
aren't
long
we
as our-
talking about,
As long as our bar is lower. it's
no,
okay.
I understand that, but maybe I'm confused about, aren't we talking about, are we just talking about what, the bargaining unit right now then?
I think non-represented get the same.
In
Non-representative doesn't get the opt-out. They get the supplemental optional benefit, but they don't get the $600 a month
Right,
opt-out.
but if we did this, Vincent's proposal, it seems like we're doing it to get a council member a similar benefit. When, to me, this is all about the employees. This isn't about council members and council members' benefits. I mean, you know what it is when you come in to be a council member. You know, I serve 4 years and I have to be reelected, and if you sit out 2 years, maybe, what if you sat out 4 years? Or maybe you sat out 6 years, and then you come back.
You'd sit out 20 years and come back.
And then,
And then retire the
is that really
next day.
consecutive years? Yes, and technically it is, but I don't think anyone would agree that someone should have a benefit that sat out 12 years or whatever, and then they come back all of a sudden and, oh, okay. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me.
How did we arrive at the 5 years? Was that something that's set by law, or, I mean, is that?
no, it is not set by law.
So, are there other cities or municipalities have less of a vesting than 5 years, or is that a generally
I
what it
don't know of
is?
any other cities that
I know
have,
CalPERS has
I-
5
the
years.
5 years.
I can talk about what the county.
What's the
side-
county have?
County's 25 years.
You have to-
25
You have to
years?
vest, you have to
25.
work for 25 years?
Yeah, the way we work in the county
that
is
sounds
that
pretty good.
from 10-year mark until 1 day, not even 1 day less. You have to give full 10 year and you get 40%. And every year you earn an additional 4%, so only until you hit 25 year, end of your 25th year, you're gonna get 100% limit. So this is actually pretty rich. So I would not propose anything less than 5 years. Honestly, if I can make it longer, I would. But, because, I mean, look, it is lifetime. It is lifetime benefit for only working for 5 years. It's pretty rich.
It goes beyond lifetime because there's spousal benefit too,
Well, not here. Well,
in the county.
yeah. Well, county has. But county has had that 25-year bar. Here it is 5-year bar. That's one thing.
All right, well, certainly a lot of options being discussed here, but if I hear correctly, there's more of a majority
I
to.
think there's a majority view is to keep it consecutive. Right.
If that's,
But you
if
can
I-
make
if I'm
that
hear-
motion, Vincent, and see how it goes.
No, that's okay. I heard with the rest of the council.
I
So-
haven't heard
Well,
William.
it's part of the discussion. I mean, that's so that we don't have to.
How do you
have
feel?
some-
Yeah.
I mean, I see Councilmember Yu's point. I just think a lot of our discussion here is very hypothetical. I think that's where it's hard for me to say there's one really convincing side.
But it does translate to dollars and cents.
It does, and I think, again, the original goal of council to start this was really aimed at looking at the financial health of the city in the long term. Like to your point, you talked extensively about reducing the OPEB liability. And in terms of just looking at the dollars and cents, perhaps Director Paragus could confirm this, but really it's the city staff side that carries the bulk of what is it makes up the bulk of that compared to what the council members would have. So really, and then to Mayor Pro Tem's point, the net benefit is largely on the staff side. So it to me, I think it boils, based on the information we have now, I think it's incumbent to go in that direction, which is do what's best, which is the consecutive years, because that gives us the maximum
Benefit,
OPEB
yeah.
reduction in the liability. I think, though, to Councilmember Yu's point, and I think all 5 of us here can attest that serving on council, there's a lot of variables, and you certainly highlighted one of those. And I know you've been a big advocate of reducing the obstacles to for people to serve in this capacity, which I think we all recognize and appreciate. But perhaps there's other ways we can reduce those obstacles, and perhaps this is not the
And
one
I
to
think just
focus on.
to that point, one last thing. I think we would all agree that, you know, having a council member serve 4 years, and, you know, assuming they're doing a good job, which I think most everybody that we've had up here has done that by knowing that it's going to be 5 years to vest, it would actually encourage that person to stay on council and do all they
Instead of
can
resigning.
to run and be reelected.
Sure.
So there is that kind of incentive for that,
Yeah.
which is kind of the same incentive for
an
employees, is, hey, we want you to stick around because, you know, we value you as an employee. We don't want to, that the turnover is not a good thing for city. So
Yeah.
it's that consecutive thing, I think, that, I don't know that we really want to pull that away from it. So-
Well, I'm really speaking in hypothetical terms for a hypothetical council member, because I know for a fact that not all council members have taken health insurance, nor council member retired from the city had actually used this benefit. So some of us have health benefit from other places. So I'm just speaking of a hypothetical again. This doesn't really apply to any one of us here.
All right, but I think it's good that we're having that discussion, just for those who are going to serve 15, 20 years from now when the benefit of this is being realized, then perhaps anyone who's interested in that time is going to look back on this meeting and say, okay, well, this is this was the rationale for this decision that the council made at this time. And that we did consider all angles, and I thank Councilmember Yu for actually bringing up that, because that wasn't something that was really in the discussion of this, so to speak. But I think it's good to have that in the record. All right. I mean, I think I've said enough, and we've discussed this quite a bit. May we have a council motion for this item?
Love to read.
Okay, it's just a clarification, how do you want this motion? Have we already made the change to the documents that we're going to
So we
make a motion, or do you want me to make a motion with that change?
I think what we need is to have the motion with the change to Resolution 235693 and the change to Resolution 235694 to clarify under the vesting block in the chart that it is 5 consecutive years. And so
So it's just under those two resolutions?
just those two resolutions.
5690 and 5694?
Correct.
The other ones aren't affected by that?
Correct.
5693.
5693 and 5694.
Correct.
5692, excuse me, Exhibit 1 will also need to be modified.
Yeah, Yeah, that exhibit 1.
92.
It's page
Okay.
20 of the packet.
So
Wouldn't
it's-
it be easier just to just say all resolutions? I mean, so that would be the only resolution that's not affected by that would be
The first two.
93?
So 90 and 91 are not affected. So so on page 4 of the side letter, instead of a total of 5 years, it would read 5 consecutive years. Is that correct, Ms. Pargas?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
So which ones are we changing? 56?
92, 93, and 94 to clarify that 5 consecutive years of service is required for vesting into these rights.
All right, let me take a shot at it if you don't mind. Then.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I would propose a motion to adopting resolution 23-5690, fixing the city's contribution under PEMHCA for employees and retired annuitants to the PEMHCA minimum effective October 1st, 2023. And also propose a resolution 235691 as stated in attachment C. And propose resolution 235692 attachment D as revised to include the language that the 5-year period be consecutive. And also adopt resolution 235693 attachment E with the same correction or that the 5-year consecutive term. And then in resolution number 235694 attachment F as proposed with the change that the 5-year period also be consecutive. I think that covers all of them.
City Attorney says we're good. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes?
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. Okay. Next, we move to item 10C, illegal fireworks enforcement. Start with City Manager Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Mann and members of the council. This is a report back to the council on some of the challenges that we have on illegal firework enforcement, a report back on some of the activities that we have. If I can just start out, and our public safety supervisor, Brian Arizumi, is here, and 2 members of our dedicated sheriff's teams, both Deputy Bowie and Deputy Lamb, are here, who've gone through much of the illegal firework enforcement. Illegal firework enforcement is challenging. There is no silver bullet. There is no single thing that we can do that would make it easier in terms of the challenges that we have. In the report, Mr. Arizumi, in consultation with our dedicated deputy team and others, kind of laid out what some of those challenges are. And in terms of the enforcement, and part of the biggest function of that is, yes, they may be used in conjunction with safe and sane fireworks, but we do have challenges throughout the city in terms of the layout of our city, where fireworks activity happens, and the biggest component of it is that we have to catch somebody in the act. We must see that person in the act of firing off an illegal firework.
Yeah, before you go any further on that, do you mind if I ask a real quick question, because I think it's related
Okay.
to what Mr. Cook said. Greg, do these qualify for a citizen's arrest situation? Because I know that one of the challenges is that one of our sheriffs or public safety officers actually see it take place. That is like finding a needle in a haystack. But if a neighbor sees a neighbor doing it, Is that something that cannot be enforceable if they relate that to a police officer?
You know, we looked at this with the sheriff's department out of a different station, but in LA County back in 2021. They weren't comfortable, and they weren't comfortable with the city's code officers writing it based on the observation of a neighbor.
Okay.
They're perfectly fine if the city wanted to set up some kind of July 4th hotline. You know, we're on a cul-de-sac, please come over here, there's a lot going off. And then either the city or the deputies patrolling that night could go to that
But I
location.
think we do that already.
If we do that already, then
Well, I
that's,
don't know if we have a hotline, though.
that's probably the best we
Is that a
can
play on
do.
words, hotline for 4th of July? Or?
It's something. But no, they were not comfortable, and the attorneys who would have to prosecute these if they went beyond administrative citations into criminal penalties, they weren't comfortable prosecuting based on a neighbor's say-so. We investigated a bit into videos, and we just deemed it wasn't reliable enough, that you really need the professionals to actually witness.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Azumi's here as well, as well as a dedicated team. There's truly no easy answers related to the enforcement of illegal fireworks. It is a challenge, and one of the other challenges too, quite frankly, is the day of the 4th of July. There are calls for service for many other types of activities, which stretches the LA County Sheriff's Department and our personnel. One thing we'll try to do next year is, because these are administrative citations that we issue, so we don't take these as criminal acts. One thing in talking with Mr. Azumi, what we'll do probably next year is we will work with our code enforcement team to have some more bodies on the street, for lack of a better term, cars in the field, to do additional enforcement.
Who do
in
we
there
have on staff besides?
That can issue the citations?
Yeah, I mean, we had our sheriffs, but who else from staff?
I'll let Mr. Azumi go over what our current operation is and what we have some of the capacity to do from an enforcement standpoint. So go ahead, Mr. Azumi.
Okay, so would you like me to answer the question first and then go into any?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
please.
so the staff that has the authority to issue the administrative citations is currently myself as the public safety supervisor, and our 3 building and code inspectors, or our 2 building and code inspectors, and our senior community preservation officer.
Did we have all, I know you were on vacation, Brian, but were the other 3 available for?
No, so we've never included our code enforcement staff in the fireworks suppression operation.
Okay.
I currently have our parking control staff that do assist with the operation. However, under their job description, they do not have the authority to issue the administrative citations, but they are out there for a presence and sheer numbers for officer safety purposes.
So in your report, when you say there were 3 parking control officers and 1 park patrol officer, those 4 individuals could not cite anybody?
Park Patrol can.
Park
That was
Patrol.
the other position, yes.
Okay.
They do have the authority in the job description to be able to issue those administrative
The 3
citations.
parking control officers could not.
The 3 parking control officers cannot.
Can we change that?
people that can do it.
Can-
That is 5 people, or total
Is that
within the
you,
city, we
Dave?
have 3, 4, 5, 6 personnel that can. We have myself, the building and code inspectors, 1 and 3, our senior community preservation officer, and our 2 part-time park patrol officers.
Yeah, but 3 of them never go out.
Correct.
So
Uh,
really, we have 3,
Yeah.
basically.
But as Mr. Cook stated, that is something that we will discuss next year to increase our staffing, is to have a discussion with code enforcement to deploy them throughout the city as well, in addition to public safety staff and the sheriff's department.
You know, just a side comment. As long as we're selling fireworks in this city, we're sending a message that, to a lot of people, that we condone it.
Of
that-
course we are. Our community is,
That we allow it.
our community has
and then
become a
you
place where blowing up is accepted. Blowing things up is accepted. It's become the norm.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
Well, if we could allow Mr. Arizumi to maybe go through his presentation first. I know there'll be questions and time for comment.
Thank you, Mayor. So annually, the city does a fireworks suppression and enforcement operation to try and curtail the use of illegal fireworks. There's been various changes in hours that the council allowed safe and sane fireworks to be discharged. And so currently, the discharge of fireworks occurs on July 4th from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. So it is a 10-hour period. During that 10-hour period, we'll bring staff in, which includes the sheriff's department and the city, to do enforcement, usually from around 4 p.m. to about 2 a.m. To cover the enforcement period and any fireworks that are discharged after the legal use period has ended. To plan for that operation, we do look at a few things. We look at historic data from previous operations. We look at complaints that we do receive from the public by both the city and the sheriff's department, and also looking at specific houses that may be identified or problem areas or neighborhoods.
Real quick question, I know I'm not gonna interrupt you again, but who do we, if a person has a complaint, should they call the sheriff department or should they call the city? I mean,
So if it's
what's the
events
best way?
leading up to 4th of July, they can call the city, they can call us, and they can refer it to me. Or if they're calling the sheriff's department, they can call and speak to one of our special assignment deputies. Calling the station itself won't do too much, and so that would be something of a quality of life special issue, so that our special assignment team or myself working with the team would be able to ensure that that is looked at on the day of operation. And so once we do have the plans established and identifying locations that we will check based on complaints and historic data, we will deploy on the 4th of July. And with enforcement, what we're looking for is, again, that discharge of illegal fireworks or possession of illegal fireworks. And what becomes difficult is to identify the perpetrator or the person discharging the fireworks, because we do need, as Mr. Cook stated, to see them and identify them as committing the act of lighting or discharging that firework. If we do catch them walking out with the firework without discharging it and we can verify that it is an illegal firework, we can cite them for possession. And so we do have the option of doing both possession of illegal fireworks and discharge of illegal fireworks. And then if there are fireworks that are abandoned on someone's front yard and no one wants to claim responsibility, we can cite the property owner or the tenant in charge of the property for possession, as it is on their private property and they're responsible. Councilmember, you?
Just a quick question, Mr. Arizumi. Is there any quick way of easily identifying illegal versus legal fireworks from distance? Can you tell? Oh, that's got to be illegal.
So-
is there any way for you to tell?
From a distance, anything that shoots up in the air, flies, or explodes is illegal. So from a distance, if you see the mortar rounds that are going up into the air and exploding, those are definitely illegal. Safe and sane fireworks, they emit sparks and showers, but they do not explode and they do not shoot up into the air.
So anything that goes in the air is illegal.
Anything that shoots up in the air and explodes is illegal.
Oh, I didn't know that.
which accounts for about 95% of all the fireworks that go off in Temple City.
So that's where we have the difficulty is we need to try and pinpoint that location, and sometimes it's triangulating with the multiple units that we have. One of the other issues that we have is sometimes staffing levels where we do not have enough personnel. 4th of July, there are many events that occur in other cities, and so the Sheriff's Department as a whole has a lot of strain on the resources because everybody is pulling those resources on overtime to fill either their saturation operations or the special events with the fireworks show and carnival. The other issue that we have, as Mr. Cook stated, is when they do commingle their safe and sane and illegal fireworks, it's hard to identify. They know what we're looking for, and they will play a game of light one illegal firework, wait a little bit, do some safe and sane ones, and so when we're driving around, we see the safe and sane, and then as we're leaving or kind of going to another area because there's nothing occurring there, then they'll shoot off that illegal firework. And so that commingling of the safe and sane and illegal fireworks makes it difficult to identify exactly what's going on. Another issue that we have is that sometimes the fireworks are discharged from rear yards, and it's hard to find them when they're doing it from the street or in the front yard. It's even more difficult when they're doing it from the rear yard because we cannot see exactly where they're coming from. And it's hard in the rear yard, especially if it happens sporadically. We need to pull most of our resources to try and triangulate that location to try and pinpoint. And then when we do, it's sometimes difficult to get into the yards to verify, because if they don't open the door or don't respond to our knocking on the door and asking to conduct an inspection, we're not going to push the issue and go about it.
So I have a question on that. So let's for a moment here imagine we did ban safe and sane in the city, and everyone decided to start setting off illegal fireworks in the backyard. What would we do?
So if we did ban safe and sane, they're still going to occur, but it would be same thing that it'd be easier to try and pinpoint because we're not looking at a bunch of safe and sane displays going on. Any fireworks that are discharged in the city, if all fireworks are illegal, does make it a little bit easier to try and pinpoint from an enforcement standpoint because there may be less amount of people or groups that are doing it as opposed to larger families or blocks doing it with the legal safe and sanes.
But if I understand, illegal are the ones that fly up in the air.
Illegal are the ones that fly or explode.
So from an enforcement standpoint, if you're looking down the street, I'm just trying to understand, because you're the ones on the ground looking at this. Like visually speaking, you're looking up, right? You're not looking down.
We're looking down the street. And so sometimes if we suspect a location where maybe we're driving around and we think it's the next block over that we see a firework shoot up in the air, we're going to try and identify what street and whereabouts on that block that it's occurring. And then we're going to try and get to that location to remain hidden as best as we can while trying to get some visual confirmation and observation on where it's being discharged, identify who's discharging it, and then once we're there, then we'll look for it. Sometimes we're driving down the street and we're looking down the street and you can see a firework that shoots up in the air and we know that location is doing it. We're going to try and go to that location as soon as possible. But if we go in too soon, then we lose any ability to enforce it because they just abandon it. It's in the middle of the street. We never saw anybody that lit it, and no one's going to claim responsibility, and everybody kind of, well, it's not mine. I was here. And so
How many cites did we give last year?
This year we gave 4 citations.
4?
4.
Brian, have you ever spoken to, or do you know, like, our neighboring city of San Gabriel? They don't have fireworks, but how are they doing with the illegal ones? Do you have any idea?
San Gabriel, I'm sure. I haven't spoke to them. I don't know if the deputy's spoken with any of the officers. We haven't spoke to them necessarily. I know Duarte has prohibited, and they do enforcement operations because they have ongoing issues. And so Duarte has a complete ban on all fireworks, and they're still out there doing enforcement. I'm sure San Gabriel is very similar. I know when we're up in the west end of Temple City, we do hear fireworks going on west of us, and so that would be in the city of San Gabriel.
Arcadia, do they have?
Arcadia prohibits fireworks as well.
And I see them on my border.
Yeah, they occur. And one of the difficult things that we have that I forgot to include in the staff report is because we are a community that allows safe and sanes, there are other neighborhoods that around us like San Gabriel and Arcadia that do come into the city to light the fireworks. And it's not only coming in to do the safe and sane, but they come into the city to do the illegal fireworks as well.
How about El Monte?
El Monte allows it. El Monte, if you're out there on a night of 4th of July, it sounds like a war zone.
Alhambra is also. I think Alhambra is given up. because I'm at my sister's house every year, and there's smoke everywhere. They're all up in the air. And I haven't in the last 5 years seen a policeman come up the street. Before they did, they even had, what are they called, the special ones? Something where they look at fireworks particularly. They used to have those people come up in the street, and they would cite people. They weren't all Alhambra PDs. I forget what the back of their jacket said. They're in charge of, like firearms and...
DEA?
ATF?
Yes. And they would have their jackets on, and they would walk the street. But after 5 years, I think that went away, maybe finances or what have you. But it is crazy. If you think Temple City is bad, it's not even 10% of what Alhambra is.
Well, I think we're just fooling ourselves to think that somehow we're going to be able to alleviate the problem of illegal fireworks as long as we have legal fireworks. It isn't going to happen. I feel for you guys. There's no way that you can catch these people the way the system is set up. There's just no way. I mean, you've got fireworks going off all over the city. Illegal, legal ones. To pinpoint and catch somebody at that exact moment when they're lighting the fuse, that's just totally
insane.
Ridiculous. That ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. I've talked to clients of mine who live out in San Bernardino, Riverside County, where a lot of those cities, Hemet, those areas, they don't allow fireworks. And I asked them, well, how is it on 4th of July? Yeah, quiet, no problem. Yeah. So it's gotta work to say that you're going to have illegal fireworks even if you bar the safe and sane ones, yeah, you probably will, but I gotta believe it's gonna be a heck of a lot less, and at some point, it's just gonna end because, then it would be easy to catch people, because if, as you say, if they're lighting a firework, it's illegal, period. And, it's, but to keep continuing the way we are continuing, I think we're just throwing good money after bad. I can't even, imagine sending you guys out on the street on that night when you've got to deal with people who have been partying all day, drinking all day. What kind of environment that we're sending you guys into? Although, sheriffs, of course, they're trained for that. You're trained for that. But to send a code one of our building code guys out there, come on, that ain't gonna happen. I mean, that would be dangerous to do that without some special training, at least. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where, I appreciate what you put in your report and the challenges, but I think we've been aware of these challenges for years, and yet every year we have this same discussion, and around August, September, October, we go on to other things, and then all of a sudden it's June again, and we're saying, oh, wait a minute, we got 4th of July coming up. What are we going to do?
Having been around the block a few times here, in the past it was the pressure from Little League, from the football people, and all these different groups, special interest groups, that actually kept it alive, kept the fireworks here. We don't seem to have that kind of pressure anymore.
I think we do, and I'll bring up a good point. At our last school board meeting, I brought this up. And the school board members were against ending fireworks because of that, because of the loss to all the groups that sell fireworks.
The revenue.
I mean, of the nine permits we issued, I think 5 of them were to Temple City Unified School District activities.
Yeah, they
So
said
they want them.
They said there's no other fundraising that they can do that even comes close to the amount they can raise in a span of 3 days.
Yeah, so that's still a thing.
Nothing comes close.
Now, you might remember that, wasn't it years ago that we put it on the ballot, I think? I don't know, did you ever get any information, or maybe Peggy knows about that we had it on the ballot at one time?
Had to be more than 20 years,
Yeah,
right?
it was way before all of us. I I don't know if you were on the council at the time. And I think it just barely lost, if I remember. It was a close vote, but it lost. And after that, nobody was ever interested in bringing that issue back. And of course, anytime we talk about it, you know, you think that the world was going to come to an end because, you know, we're going to deny Little League of their $10,000 that they make. You know, but.
So if I can maybe interrupt you, we're getting into the discussion side. I want to give Mr. Arizumi a opportunity to. Do you have any portions of your presentation that you haven't been able to get to?
No, just to conclude that once we do identify the violator, we can issue, as I stated, administrative citation for 1 or 2 violations. The 1 is the discharge, and then 2 is the possession of. And then also at the conclusion of our investigation, if there are any unexploded illegal fireworks, we do confiscate those fireworks, and at the end of the operation, they're surrendered to LA County Fire for safe and proper destruction.
All right. Yeah, because there is a public comment period that I also like to get to before we continue the council discussion. But before the public comment, council member, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we open the public comment? All right.
I do have a couple of.
Okay.
One of the things that you mentioned in your report is the challenge that when you are patrolling in the city and they see the sheriff car or the public safety car, those activities usually cease or people go in the house or whatever. Have we ever considered using unmarked cars to patrol the city?
We've used a couple in the past. The availability of unmarked cars isn't as great as the patrol cars. Recently, especially with the issue that we have with having to procure another vehicle for our special assignment deputy for the team. A lot of the other vehicles, because of the other operations going on in the other cities, those vehicles are assigned to the detectives and they're using it during those operations. If we use a undercover vehicle that is not outfitted with any lights or sirens, it's difficult to enforce because as we're rolling up, we're turning on our lights and hitting the air horn or the siren to get the attention and effect, basically.
Well, I understand it's like a catch-22, but it's like, what good is it to have you guys out there if we're blaring our horns and coming and everybody sees you coming? That doesn't take much of a genius to figure out they're going to probably just stop.
Yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Let's see. So in your report, you stated you had 8 persons out on July 4th. Do you feel that having more people on the street to patrol would make a difference? And if so, how many more people or other things that we could do to try to suppress that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the more personnel that we have out in the field, the greater our enforcement efforts can be. It can either aid in us trying to pinpoint and triangulate that location where we have maybe 2 teams working one location trying to figure out exactly where it's going. We also have a greater area that we can cover if we have more personnel out in the field, but we always want to maintain at a minimum 2 personnel per vehicle.
And I think
for
that's
that
a great
officer
idea.
safety.
But let's say you had, instead of 8, you had 16 people out there. Would that make a difference?
We would probably issue more sites, just again, because the sheer numbers that we can cover a larger area or kind of more focused.
But of course, that would come with a price tag, I'm
Correct.
assuming.
More bodies means more overtime,
Perhaps
especially.
that's something maybe in the future, when you come back to us, you could present. Because I think your report was very well done as far as from a factual standpoint, but didn't give us a whole lot of things that we could do to meet these challenges. I mean, certainly we all know the challenges that are there, but I would not be upset if you were to come to us and say, hey, we need more people. council, if you want to have this happen, and we do, we want this issue, we want to try to get this thing under control. What is it it's going to take? Is it going to take more people? Is it going to take other things? And of course, we would look to you and the sheriffs as experts in this particular area to tell us what it's going to take. So, I would like to see that, because it just doesn't seem, and I hate to say this, but I have to say it anyway. We didn't get much bang for our buck this year, did we? Right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, 4 citations and 20 pounds of that doesn't really, obviously, we were lacking in that particular area.
Temple City was on the news with our school board members at the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How great it is,
How great
everything.
fireworks are.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
And so, if I can just answer that question as well, this year I believe we had budgeted for 8 deputies to work overtime for 4th of July on fireworks suppression.
But we didn't get 8 deputies.
But we only had our team that will be out all the time on the operations. But again, because of those competing events from the other cities, there is the available pool of deputies to work the overtime is severely diminished. We try to utilize reserves. And so where we can, we try to get reserve deputies. But again, there's competing interests throughout the station's patrol area with the events occurring at the same time.
Do you think fireworks shows have any impact or effect on the use of illegal fireworks or the use of fireworks? Do you have any feeling for that, maybe in talking with other areas that do? I know, does Alhambra do a fireworks show?
Yes.
Every year.
And it sounds like it doesn't make a difference, huh?
Doesn't make a difference.
Almanzar Park.
Maybe it just adds
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, Alhambra.
I have a question for the city attorney. Can we, as a council, this body, discontinue selling fireworks, or do we have to go to the public for the election?
So the ordinance that sets up the selling of fireworks, I would need to go work with the city clerk to make sure that that ordinance that allows the selling of safe and sane fireworks was something adopted by the council. If it was adopted by the council, then the council can go ahead and revoke it. If it was adopted by an initiative, adopted by the voters, then to get rid of it or to make a substantial change to it, you'd have to go back to the voters. It might be possible to do a short-term moratorium or a short-term health and safety related kind of abeyance of selling. But we would, again, I want to make sure that we fully understand the way that the ordinance was put into place, and then I can bring you back the options for dealing with it, either long-term or short-term.
Could we at least find out for sure what it would take?
I absolutely will do that. I'll work with the city clerk on that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One last question. Do we ever receive any information from St. Gabriel Humane Society or any other animal shelters as far as the impact that all of these fireworks, or legal or illegal, have on the animals in our city? I mean, do we have any kind of feedback on that? Because I know a lot of the people who complain to me about the fireworks are complaining not for themselves, but because of their animals and the effect that it has on them.
We don't, as far as myself or the sheriff's department hasn't received anything. I don't know if anything's related to Scott Reimers, as he's the liaison to the Humane Society, but nothing that I'm aware of or that we've been informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess to follow up on my previous question, if someone were to set up, because you mentioned if someone set off an illegal firework in their backyard and we had no way of accessing it, we basically cannot cite them. Is that correct?
Correct. We need to observe the act of that. If we can prove that it occurred on the property and we can show that they were in possession of illegal fireworks, whether it's unexploded or discharged fireworks, we could potentially cite the property owner or the tenant involved, responsible for that property.
How much is the fine?
$1,000 per violation.
Right, but let's say you couldn't get into the backyard, like there's a gate, and then you couldn't see into the backyard.
If we
But
can't,
it was pretty obvious from your experience that you triangulate and it's that property. Can you cite them?
we can potentially cite them, but again, we're gonna probably cite the property owner. And so we would have to, not that evening, we would have to come back and do a property record search to see who is on record as the property owner. Because if we can, through our own observation, prove that they were in possession of that illegal firework, because if a firework, or a safe and sane firework, if it's prohibited, if a firework is discharged from that private property, and we know exactly what property it came from, then in essence, we can cite the property owner for allowing fireworks to be on their property.
And
But
so to follow, I have a series of questions related to that, because this was something that I believe Mayor Pro Tem had asked previous years as well. And it's to the fact that most of us know exactly where some of these fireworks are being set off. In fact, I think if we pulled all our knowledge together, we could give you probably more than 30 houses. So
Let me
what's,
tell you something, you can park a car on the corner of Persimmon and Freer and you'll catch about 50 people.
right, and so my point is, why don't we do that? What's stopping us from essentially saying, we know that house sets it off every single year, so we're just gonna figure out a way to camp out, triangulate, and then when it goes off, boom.
we do that, and that's where, based on historical data or complaints, we'll sit in the neighborhoods. But if we're sitting in a neighborhood, people see us, and then they'll call out and say, cops are on the corner, or say something. And sometimes if they're doing them in the backyards, they'll have people that come out to the street and look around to see what's outside, and then they'll go back in. And so,
That's where you get the unmarked cars, that way you can park there. They won't see you.
yeah, so it can be difficult, but again, if we're gonna spend an hour or 2 hours sitting in one spot while behind us, in front of us, and on side of us, there's other fireworks that are being discharged,
You'd need 100 people.
if we had a person on every block, then we can, in essence, solve it. But if we, and that's the difficulty that we've had this past 4th of July, is we were sitting, watching, waiting in certain neighborhoods for it to occur. And as we're waiting, there's fireworks being discharged around us. And we're sitting there for 20, 30 minutes with nothing happening at the location that we're watching. And so we're going to go on to try and catch the ones that we see that are occurring. And then as we do that, it's kind of that cat and mouse game where sometimes they see us, and as we get closer to the house, they stop doing it. And if we sit in a location trying to not be visible to them, then they stop doing it.
Okay, and I didn't mean to try to accuse you guys of not doing that.
No.
It was the first time I've heard definitively that that was a strategy that we deploy. Because before, it was like, I was thinking it was just cat and mouse, you're always roaming around.
No, we're not always running around. We'll try and
Okay.
sit at a location, but that's where, if it's a long street or if it's a cul-de-sac, we want to try and get into a position that we can sit and watch and wait for them to discharge it. But we still need to be close enough to be able to, down the street, look and try to identify, based on clothing, height, and any other identifying factors, the person that lit that firework. So when we do go up to the property, we can identify that person and pull them out.
You have to be close enough to see that, they're gonna see you.
Correct.
Have we had any repeat offenders in the last few years?
No, I've been keeping stats on who we've cited and locations that we've cited. And since 2016, we have not cited one individual more than once.
And Brian, did the people that were cited, was there a lot of fireworks or illegal fireworks? Do we take those also, right?
Correct.
When you're
If
cited?
it's a small amount or if it's a large amount, whatever we determine and identify as being illegal, we will confiscate and surrender to the fire department for proper disposal.
But they have to be out there, you can't go in their house and search your house for them.
We'll ask them, do you have any more in the house?
They
And
don't say no.
sometimes they'll go in and bring out what they have.
Oh, they're real smart.
Other ones are, nope, that's all, that was my last
They're not
one.
lawyers.
No, they're not lawyers.
Councilmember Yu, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that triangulating somebody's backyard and speculating they actually did discharge, I'm not sure that's going to hold up. I don't know.
I think
if
that
you
would be a
can
very
re-
difficult case to prove.
Yeah, I mean, you can try and then they might still pay, but just, I don't know if that's a viable.
Well, I'll give you an example. A neighbor of mine was started off in the backyard.
Yeah.
I told him, look, we don't allow illegal fireworks in Temple City. So he moved to the front yard.
You want
I'm
to
not
show
sure
you?
if that was one of the citations you gave, but he was shooting illegal fireworks all night long.
Oh.
And Brian knows because I was calling him every 10 minutes. But it was very clear who was doing it
Calling
and
you.
when he was doing it. But again, you know, it's like that needle in a haystack. I mean, unless you guys see them, there's not much you can do. And
Could
they're not
I-
stupid entirely. I
um,
mean, you know, they'll know when to shoot them off and when not to shoot them off. And hey, there's a sheriff car on our block. Maybe we should stop. Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
let me ask.
Reinforcement.
Yeah.
Let me ask an obvious question. Can the city fly drones over somebody's
Yeah, I was thinking
backyard
that too,
and
but I
catch
don't know.
them?
We've actually talked about that as well, and it's something we would need to thoroughly explore the legality
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that
yeah,
and
yeah.
understand
That's
its
for
legal
lawyers to
implications.
decide.
It would be it would be another tool in our arsenal, but I don't believe legally it's we'd have to. I don't believe we can. I don't. Even the sheriff's department can't just.
Does the sheriff
You-
have drones that you guys use?
Yeah, but not for enforcement.
Unless you
It-
have
it would
a
be-
warrant or something, right?
We're gonna
Not
look
even
like
with a
Ukraine.
warrant. Okay.
We already
Right,
do.
Yeah, and if we do fly drones, I'm sure there'll be people shooting at the drones with the fireworks.
Let's see if I can get that.
Yeah, they aim the fireworks at the drones probably.
Yeah, yeah.
The preferable kind of enforcement tool is to be invited into a yard by a neighbor who knows that their neighbor is shooting them off,
But see,
is
that's the
upset
problem.
about
though.
it.
Neighbors don't really like to snitch
I
on neighbors.
know.
No.
They really don't. At
Has
least
to-
that's my.
Has to
that's
go
my
pretty far
experience.
for that to happen, but no, drones tend to be considered an unreasonable search because you are overlooking part of the property that you can't get to on your own. You haven't been invited onto a neighboring property, and unless you have some kind of probable cause, which
Yeah.
in this case, what you're
Yeah,
saying
but-
is, hey, there's fireworks being shot from one of those properties, we don't know which one, so we're gonna fly over all of them. That's gonna
Yeah, I
most
think they have
likely-
an
I
expectation
was
of
thinking
privacy
this-
in their backyard.
I was
so-
thinking the same thing, but I think there would be some constitutional issues to overcome.
Yeah,
there.
I just throw that out there so people can
No,
hear it.
it's a good idea, but the one last question I have is, Brian, we don't have a dedicated hotline set up for residents to call, do we? I mean, I know you mentioned earlier they can call the sheriff or they can call the city, but I know, Brian, did you mention there's some cities that have or somebody said something about a hotline? Some cities actually have a hotline.
Greg mentioned the hotline, but we do not have a hotline in Temple City. We
Could that
have,
be something we would set up, and do you
Sure.
think that would be something that would help the situation?
yeah, we can definitely work it up, and then we can advertise it that they can report throughout the year.
I mean, even advertising the hotline, maybe somebody will, oh, they get a hotline now, maybe I better watch what I'm doing, because my neighbor could call me in or something without,
We can definitely do
you know,
that.
something like that.
So what it would wind up being is a phone that's going to be, you're gonna have somebody sitting at the desk at City Hall, so it's another human being on duty that night, at a desk, receiving calls.
Well, look.
At times, the calls will come fast and furious, but then they'll be reporting out to city staff to say, we're hearing about this area or that area or certain properties.
But to me, that's a monetary thing. Okay, so let's say we have a person there, even we have 2 or 3 people there during the peak hours. Well, what price is that to save property or lives if it's going to do that? And to me, that's the policy level things that we have to make as leaders in the community. And, you know, are we going to spend money that's going to mitigate these problems? Because there's something we have to do. I mean, I don't think anybody can sit up here and say, let's just let it go. It'll take care of itself. It's getting worse every year. Every year it has gotten worse. We thought, oh, the pandemic, kind of slowed down. And now all of a sudden everybody's breaking loose. The pandemic's over. Let's make fools of ourselves again. So, it's not going to go away. It's simply not going to go away. And I think it's unfair for us to expect the staff that we have now and the sheriffs that we have available to really make an impact on this situation. There's something that we have to do, and we have to do it sooner than later. And if that's banning fireworks, or if that's not banning them but doing other things that may mitigate it, I mean, and last point that I'll make, and that is maybe the last point, I don't know, but we have to start doing this now, not wait till June to say, okay, what are we going to do? Because I remember this year, we didn't even get a report as what we were going to do. I think one of us had to bring it up at one of our sheriff's meetings. Next week it's 4th of July. What are we doing? There was no plan. Okay? And so that just can't happen. I mean, it just can't.
Maybe, I think because a lot, think it was Vince or Fernando said about the youth groups, that there was always a large push, and you said that there still is, that some talks really start to take place between the school district, both of you as liaisons, and working with them
We
to
tried
see
to,
if they
we
can.
brought that up at the last meeting, and we were met with what I would characterize as cold shoulders and no interest in it whatsoever. None. It was an agenda item.
It was an agenda.
Oh,
item.
yes.
Yeah, I think from their perspective, they're gonna, I guess, if it happened that way, I think they would suffer part of that backlash as well.
So, I mean, knowing that and how we're trying to build bridges with the school district, and I mean, it seems that discussion, they have to help us also. And I think that message needs to get across to them that, listen, city council is going to be faced with a decision with this possibly because we're concerned about it. Our residents are concerned about it. I know it's money for the youth groups, but maybe the school district needs to think of some ways that they can help them raise funds.
Well, one of those suggestions that I make was have a fireworks show. I know some cities do fireworks shows, and they have those organizations set up booths to sell things during the day and make it a whole celebration. But there was really no interest in that either, that I could detect.
They have the football field they could use.
Well, but one of the issues that's going on there is they're going to be redoing that football stadium, and so that's not going to be available for a couple of years probably. I agree with you, but
Well, I think because what's going to happen is if city council, I think first of all, Greg, you're going to look and see what we can and cannot do. So we can discuss this all night, but we still don't know what we're going to do, be able to do or not do as far as can we put it on the ballot? Do we have to put it on the ballot? Can we make this decision on our own? If it comes to that point where we're faced with that, you're going to have this whole room out the doors and around the corner packed, and we always say, well, we want to be responsive to our residents. So then it becomes a very difficult and challenging thing for us to do by ourselves. So the more buy-in we can get where they understand, maybe there just needs to continue to put it on the agenda.
Well, I know we're well into discussion, and I was about to open public comment, but before that, does anyone need a quick couple-minute break, as we've been going for a while? No?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, then let's open the public comment. I know, would you like to speak on this item?
You're the only public here, Jerry.
That's why I'm looking straight at him.
You mean the outlet? You're the public.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Jerry Jambazian. I'm in favor of the hotline. I think that's a great idea, and I think nothing, deters more than hitting somebody in the pocketbook. And I'm just wondering if you've ever thought about raising the fine to $5,000 instead of $1,000, and doing some public service announcements, going to Instagram and also Facebook, because a lot of people, even the ones that set off illegal fireworks, are looking at that. And if they know that possibly my neighbor might turn me in or anonymously say, hey, they're shooting off fireworks, I hate to tell you, but what are we, a month or two after July 4th? They were going off in my neighborhood last night. So, I mean, it's kind of just, yeah, I mean, it's disturbing at 10 o'clock at night to have these fireworks going off. But I think it'd be a great idea, you know, and just, but one question I have, though, is that I remember a couple years ago, there were 20 citations. So if you have an 80% drop this year, what caused that drop? And that's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I was
Thank you,
also
Mr.
very
Gambisi.
surprised by the lack of, what I thought a lack of citations, considering the amount of fireworks that were being shot in the city. To only have 4 citations, that just seems to me not a whole lot going on there.
Okay, well, since you're the only person in the public, I could close public comments. All right, I know we've kind of blurred the questions and council discussion. Maybe I'll allow Councilmember Yu a chance to, you haven't asked as many questions or said much, but do you have any, what's your thoughts on this item?
I'm not sure there's much we can do about it. If you ask me personally, I love fireworks. So I would not be the one that will be in favor of banning
Yeah, but do you love
safe
regular
and sound,
fireworks?
safe and sound
Or
fireworks.
you don't love illegal fireworks? You
No,
love the
I
regular
don't love
fireworks.
illegal, but I'm not sure there's much we can do about illegal fireworks. Especially if people can shoot from a backyard, and there's not much you can really do about it, unless you can. I think the law, the constitutional issues that stop us from looking to or try to look into people's backyard, because there's an expectation of privacy. So I think personally, I'm not sure. Actually, I even question, you know, the expense that we put in, whether it's actually yield any real results, because, you know, we'll be chasing after the wind, looks like. So.
Councilmember Scar, any
Yeah,
concluding thoughts?
I'm torn a little bit. I hate it the way it is now. And ever since I became a dog owner, even more so, because it makes the animals crazy. Don't you have that problem, Don?
Yep.
Yeah. But what I don't know who came up with this idea. Was it you, Tom? That we have a fireworks show. Well, do away with the selling of the fireworks and have some kind of a show, like, you know, not on the level of the Rose Bowl, but something that Temple City folks could go to, and they could have their barbecue, and they could sit around and watch a real nice display all night. I think that would help matters a lot. It would get people out of their houses and not have them there setting off fireworks. They'd come to wherever you were doing it, wherever the city was doing it, and they could make a day and a night of it, you know, have barbecues and
But it doesn't work
booths and that kind of thing.
in Alhambra.
Huh?
It doesn't work in Alhambra.
It really doesn't?
No. And they have an afternoon it doesn't work.
Well,
I mean, it's a great idea. You would think this would help. A lot of those people leave the fireworks show and then go home and set off
Well, they got
fireworks.
all worked up and
Yes.
excited. They want to do that themselves.
well, those are my only ideas. Either that or just do away with the sale. I hate for things to continue the way they're going right now. They have been going since forever.
So your thoughts are banning safe and sane would reduce the amount of, it would increase the feasibility of enforcement of illegal fireworks.
Yeah, I think so.
Councilmember Sternquist?
I really think it's going to come down to getting people on board with the idea of not having fireworks in the city. I don't think that banning the sale of fireworks in the city is going to stop illegal fireworks from being in the city. It might deter it a little bit, but, you know, our residents who do fireworks and illegal fireworks, if we ban them, you know where they're going to go buy them? They're going to go to El Monte and buy them. And they're going to bring them back to Temple City. Or they're going to go to Alhambra and buy them.
I know people that go to Las Vegas, and I guess there's places off the road there where you can go
Indian
and get anything you
reservations,
want.
they sell them. They have big stores. So I don't think you can get rid of them. I think in a city like ours, it's almost a tradition here. And it's a tradition that councils and previous councils have allowed the sale of fireworks because either we couldn't get rid of them because there's not Greg's gonna look into that. But it's like any tradition. It's hard to get rid of. And when you have youth groups in your city that have profited from them to help them exist, I think it's a huge challenge. So I think really getting those youth groups involved in the discussion before it comes to council and there's some type of, something on the ballot or we try and change that, I think we're just banging our heads against the wall.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any concluding thoughts?
Well, one of the motivating factors of putting this on the agenda for me anyway was to have these types of discussions, to discuss at this level, what we can do. Not necessarily, I'm not here tonight to say, let's ban fireworks, because that's obviously a one extreme that maybe we're not ready to move to at this point. But, I'm not ready to say though that, that there's always going to be illegal fireworks, so there's not much we can do. I don't want to give up. I want to keep having this discussion from now until next 4th of July. I think tonight we've identified certain areas, certain information that we would like to get. For example, our city attorney is going to look into certain legal things we can do. I would like staff to maybe flesh out some more information. One thing I would like to hear about is we're not the only city in the world to have this issue. What are other cities doing? And I told Brian this earlier when we had our discussion. We have our JPIA conference coming up in a couple of weeks, and there's going to be a lot of council members from a lot of cities around. I plan on having a discussion with a lot of those council members to find out, what are the issues in your city? What are you doing, and how are you doing it? Because we should be in this together. Because it's not a Temple City issue. It's really a San Gabriel Valley issue, or maybe even a Southern California issue. And until everybody comes together on this and comes to some, mediation or something to figure out what we can do, it's always going to continue on. But that shouldn't be a deterrent on us trying to figure out what we can do. And all we have control over is what we control in our city. What San Gabriel does, what Alhambra does, what El Monte does. I wish we can control that, but we can't. But we can do something in our city to try to ease the situation, not only on the residents, the businesses, but on our animals. And I know people say, well, it's just an animal. Well, animals to a lot of kids a lot of people are their children. And when your animal is whining or gets under the bed because of all the fireworks that are going off, that's not something you really want to stand for.
We sedate our.
Yeah, a lot
Me
of, we
too.
used to do too, is you have to sedate them, and that's not healthy either. You know, and why are we doing that? Oh yeah, because a youth group can make a few $1,000s. Well, I'm not saying let's not help the youth groups. Maybe there's some other way that we can help them, you know, and the reason I say that is because I've talked to some of these youth groups because involved in some of the things I'm involved with, and they all say the same thing. Hey, if we could make the same money doing something else, we wouldn't sell fireworks. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work for them. And if they could replace that with something else, I think they would do it.
Maybe
So,
we get the
you know,
groups together.
Well, you know, and one of the things I had is, I know we have a limit on permits. Peggy, do you know offhand how
12.
many we can, is it 12
12.
that we can issue? But do we have to issue, can we say we're only gonna issue 4 or 5?
We'll
I mean,
check.
maybe you wanna check on that
check
too.
when
You know,
Mr.
what
Murphy
is,
checks
what
on
are
that,
the
we'll check on the
legalities
rest.
of that?
But I thought we had something in place, Peggy, where we started off with a certain amount and we would not fill them in with any new groups. Do you recall that?
Council has adopted ordinance where 12 is the limit, but if there are no new group that apply, it would be on a lottery system. So the new groups would be selected on a lottery
I can't hear
system.
you.
The new groups would be selected on a lottery system.
If
Oh,
it's
so we do have that a new group can come in.
So I mean, those are the kind of things I
Yeah,
think we
be
should
fixed.
hear more from and from staff and you know, we've taken that first step. Okay, these are the challenges. Okay, let's do what we always do as council. We know what the challenges are. Now, how are we going to meet those challenges? That's why we're elected. That's why we're sitting up here. Not to just identify the problems, but how to solve those problems. And that's how I think is the next step and where we need to move. And, you know, we need to rely on staff to do a lot of this homework, to do a lot of this checking in. And, you know, I know that other cities, like you said, I think you mentioned Duarte. I think, Brian, you mentioned Duarte bans fireworks, but they still have a problem. You know, how are they meeting those challenges? You know, what are they doing?
You know,
Go ahead.
I just had a thought. I think it would be a good idea to do a citywide survey just to know how people really feel about it.
Well, that could
And
be
how much
certainly
support we could get.
that could be an opportunity. I mean,
do
you
away
know,
with.
all surveys I think can be somewhat biased depending
Well,
on
of
how
course,
what
yeah.
kind of questions you're asking. But maybe that's something we could look at too. But you know, it's those are things that move us in a positive direction to help us make those decisions that we need to make, and anything that we can do to make those intelligent. And I always said this: our job is to make intelligent, informed decisions. But in order to do that, we need all the information that we can gather to do that kind of things. And I don't think we're there yet. So
And we
thank you.
could send council member you to the Rose Bowl. I'd pay for his ticket to go.
All right.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro
Thank
Tem.
you.
Yeah, a lot of good discussion. I want to reiterate one thing. I completely agree that we need more information if we were to take any action. I think the challenge I have with this issue is, I think year after year we are discussing based on anecdotal evidence. Not that anecdotal evidence is not relevant, but should we as a council be making policy decisions based on a lot of I think this is a lot of anecdotal evidence. The only data we have so far is number of patrols that we have on any given night, the number of citations, and what the fines are, and tonight, at least for me, a better understanding of what the strategy that our team actually takes. So I agree with Mayor Pro Tem is that if we were to make progress on this, we need something that's more data-driven. So I concur with reaching out to other cities, and they, like you said, it's a regional issue. We're not the only ones dealing with it. So how are other cities dealing with it? Is it working? The question I would have is there a city that has banned Safe and Sane recently within the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years? And have they seen a decline or an increase in the ability for their team to enforce the law? Because what if you looked at a number of cities and let's just hypothetically say, okay, well, they banned Safe and Sane, but it stayed the same. So then the question is that the right policy decision to make based on that data, right? Again, we don't have that data right now, so I don't know what the conclusion should be. And also to keep in mind when we do reach out to other cities that each city has its own unique geographic challenges, population challenges, population density challenges, as well as just the layout of your streets. Like Mr. Arizumi talked about some of the challenges tonight with our streets, cul-de-sacs, etc. Like when you bring up Duarte, the first
and flag lots.
Flag lots, yes, yeah.
You can never get to flag lots.
And like we brought up Duarte a couple of times. Duarte is a foothill city with their biggest risk is forest fires, fires on the hillside. I could understand why they banned it. Right? I think they have a very
I
good
thought
reason
in
to do so.
Duarte, Brian, not in Duarte they have different rules for different areas of the city, don't they?
They used to, but
Oh, no, they
I
don't?
think within the last 3 or 4 years, they did a citywide ban.
Oh, okay.
It used to
Yeah.
be
It's pretty
anything
recent.
north of Huntington was prohibited, but south of Huntington
Oh,
allowed
okay.
Safe and Sane.
Yeah.
But they've gone to a
Now it's
citywide
just
ban.
all-
Yeah.
So I think if this were to come back as a future agenda item, a lot of the questions that had been asked really should be in that report. And there should be more, I think the direction is there should be more data. And I know in previous council discussions, we did have some data. We have done outreach before. This I do remember. So to give staff credit is, I recall that Mr. Arizumi or your team had asked a lot of cities just to see, well, we had a list of cities that banned Safe and Sane and the cities that didn't. But I think to add on top of that is maybe engage with them more and just see, well, what's sort of been the overall kind of feedback, kind of like what you were saying. Is like, well, how do you feel as a city when it comes to your current policy and with respect to illegal fireworks?
Didn't we, Fernando, didn't we have an ad hoc committee? I know Nan Fish was on it. Who was on it with Nan to look into the fireworks issue? We actually appointed an ad hoc committee, and I know Nan was on it. I can't remember who else was on it with her. And I can't remember what they went out and I don't know if they talked to groups or they did something, and then they reported back to us as a council that nobody was really interested in making any changes at this point, which obviously if you talk to the groups, they're not going to want to make any changes. But does anybody remember that?
No, I
we keep
don't
track of
recall
ad
that,
hocs?
but
Do
I
we keep track of ad hocs?
We can see what's in the record in our
Well, I don't want
minutes.
you to do too much, but I mean, I almost remember that we had an ad hoc to address firework issues, and we established it after, like we're doing now, we were all fed up with what happened on 4th of July, and it's like, okay, let's get this done, and we did it, but then nothing ever happened.
And you weren't on it?
I wasn't on it, no, I
that's-
wasn't on it.
That's a big mistake on
Maybe
our
that was a good thing. But yeah, I could have sworn, but I don't know, maybe somebody can do some research in that, but
We can find out.
I
we
could have
could look
sworn
into
that
that.
there was.
Councilmember, you were gonna?
I was gonna say, I think last time we discussed it, there were a lot of youth group that came up and spoke passionately against it, I believe, and it could be my distant, right? Because that was a time when we actually changed the ordinance that says that 12 was the maximum. If you don't have it,
Maybe the fine, I don't know, what did they do with fines?
then, well, it's
we
like
were
you had it before
eliminating
there's a
them.
priority for you to get. I believe there were groups that came on and spoke in support.
And you know, the one last thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the one last thing I want to say about the groups, I don't want anybody out there listening to think that we're against those groups, that, they're all good groups and they do a good job, and their goal is to do good things for the city. And it's not, I don't think it's anybody's intent up here to say, look, you're doing a bad job, we want to take that money from you, we don't care about you. That's not the message we're trying to send. The message we're trying to send is we're trying to balance your need for these funds and maybe even suggest other ways of, as Fernando said, other ways of making money versus, keeping our city safe and for everybody concerned. So those of you who are out there listening for the groups, we appreciate what you're doing, and we hope you continue doing it, and hopefully we can reach some type of resolution that will continue those efforts.
I think I've heard, sorry. We've been taking notes, and we'll be ready to return that.
Okay.
to you.
Sounds like a beginning of a song.
All right.
I
So
think Amy is trying to talk to us.
Getting late.
one earlier comment was a question about the amount of fines we can actually cite. So
Sure.
I don't know if you.
Yeah, I will bring that back. I would put it this way. The state of California has a fine schedule for possession of over 25 pounds, which you'll see one of our codes is for possession 25 pounds and under. And the reason that we have that limit is we're not conflicting with state law, which is for larger amounts. We would not want to set our fine schedule at an amount higher than the state's, because that's where a court would throw it out as being unnecessarily punitive. So the highest we would go is consistent with the states in that
I
regard.
remember when we set those fines, when we raised them, that was a discussion that we had, that we couldn't make them so prohibitive that it wouldn't pass legal.
Absolutely right. And you probably raised it to 1,000 when the state raised theirs to 1,000.
Yes.
So it would certainly be time to look at it again. I know that other cities in the county have raised their fines for illegal fireworks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And also, I think for a future staff report, we know the history of how many citations we issue each year, and as it's been said many times in this discussion, is 4 seems very little considering how active the activity was citywide in terms of fireworks activity. So we want to get a better understanding of why, right? So, because if we don't understand the why, how can we make a decision on how to make it better, right? So, and again, this goes back to my original point about doing less based on anecdotal evidence, but more based on, okay, this is what we know, this is what works best, based on what we know, and let's start seeing if there's a way to change the enforcement and citation side. I think for me, maybe I'll be the, I know Councilmember Yu has stated his his opinion on this.
It's like having no Christmas and no present in Christmas.
But I'll take that one step further and maybe bring in another angle that has never really been discussed, is that there's also perhaps there's a cultural side of fireworks that hasn't really been discussed here publicly. And I say this in not to paint, again, we're not trying to paint our population in these broad strokes. So again, take it with a grain of salt. But all of us have looked at the Lunar New Year celebrations. You've either been to an event at another city or an organization, or even the ones here. You've seen what firecrackers do. They're loud.
Mm-hmm.
They make a lot of noise. So what I'm saying is there's also a significant portion of our residents that don't think noise is an issue. It might just be very difficult for you to maybe hear that or believe that, but that's the truth, because, like, to Councilmember Yu's point, I'll just speak from the Chinese cultural heritage perspective, setting off loud noise scares off evil spirits. Well,
Well,
that's
then every
just
evil
the-
spirit in Temple City should be gone by now.
Yes, according to that theory. So, again, that's just one perspective that's never really even. I'm not equating 4th of July with the Lunar New Year, not at all. Well, I'm just saying maybe the reason why you don't hear complaints from a certain segment of our population has to do with something more ingrained in your cultural subconscious that people might not even realize.
You know,
I think that's ingrained in my consciousness because for me, the noise has never been an issue. I only became acutely aware of it when my dogs were sensitive to it. So I've had dogs. I grew up with dogs, and the dog I grew up with as a child, he was surprisingly really calm during 4th of July, which is unusual, right? And then my little Pomeranian Chihuahua that my parents took away from me. But when I was living on the west side of Temple City, he would always jump into one of the cabinets because he was scared to death of the sound. So I get that point. Like, I totally understand the pet owners. I understand the veterans who have come up and said this gives me PTSD. I can't imagine how horrible that is. So that's why it's so hard for us as a policy, at least I'll speak for myself. It's really difficult for me to weigh in decisively on this matter because there's actually a lot of reasons for why people feel the way they do about fireworks.
But along that same point, I don't know when it happened, but why has the 4th of July seemed to have turned into an excuse for blowing things up? Why can't it go back to where we had parades and we had, parties and we had people would get together and barbecue and, but it seems that we've taken that to one extreme now.
no, I remember it going 60 years back.
Well, no, we've had fireworks, I'm saying that, but don't you think that it's gotten from the big blow-ups in the sky, it's gotten worse over the last few years? I remember first moving to Temple City, I don't remember the sky shining up all night long with things up in the sky and blowing up. We did fireworks for years. In fact, one of my largest clients was a fireworks distributor, okay? And nobody seemed to have a problem with it. We'd barbecue during the day, we'd do our sparklers at night, everybody'd be happy, but it's not that way anymore. And
They shake the house now.
yeah, now they shake the house, exactly. When did it turn into that? But at some point it did.
Well, like what they say, times they are changing.
They
are. But anyway, I think I know, Mr. Cook, you and Mr. Arizumi, thank you for your attention to this matter. Obviously, this will come back at a future, but we also understand it takes time to answer some of the questions we've asked you. But to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I do agree that this shouldn't be an issue that we only talk about next year in June. So I think the expectation should be this is something that comes back, at least we have something we can look at way before that.
Absolutely.
And we'll be following up on this. So. All right. We are well into
It is late.
We are well into the evening, so we won't need a council motion for this.
No, sir.
And we will move on to our next item, which is an update from our city manager.
Considering the hour, I just have one item for the council. During closed session, we have been discussing potential litigation regarding a code enforcement matter. The last time you met, you authorized myself to negotiate and execute a purchase and sale agreement for the city to purchase a property in lieu of proceeding with civil litigation. I can report to you that as of yesterday, the property owner has signed the purchase and sale agreement, and I've signed it as well, and we are moving through to escrow. Consistent with the city attorney's reporting out, prior reporting out of closed session regarding this matter, I am now authorized to give you the name and the address and the property owner. The property owner is Miss Mary DeBoer. The address is 5003 Serrano Drive. The agreement and other documents related to the purchase of this purchase in lieu of litigation are now public records, and can be accessed through the city clerk's office. I will again report back when the escrow closes and we begin remediation of the code enforcement violations on this property. That's the end of my report.
How long is the escrow?
The escrow the escrow period still has to be established. The order to vacate is 120 days from today.
And who decides, is it joint between property owner and the city?
It'll be joint
as far
between
as-
property owner and the city, but that's something I will be reporting back to the council as well.
Right, so the escrow could close at the 120-day mark. The escrow also could close earlier if certain conditions are met. The primary condition in a voluntary purchase like this one, which again is in lieu of the code enforcement litigation, the property owner has certain rights under the Uniform Relocation Assistance Act. And so if relocation is achieved at an earlier date, then escrow can close at that earlier date, because the owner would be safely in a replacement housing situation, and so you would want to close escrow for the finances to flow to that new situation. Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
That's it for my report, sir.
Okay, thank you. An update from our city attorney.
None tonight, sir.
All right, thank you. Council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Councilmember Sternquist, do we need to report out on the playground ad hoc?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, on that note, we actually have another meeting coming up this week. But Councilmember Sternquist and I did have a very productive and fascinating discussion with SWA and our Director of Parks, Director Matsumoto. And we were both very pleased with the changes that they've made to address many of council's concerns about the playground design. It is I want to say it's a significant change, but it's in alignment with what council desires. So obviously it's all going to come back to council for review and approval. We did make some, I mean, they stuck with the space theme, but there's been, the shade structure was a focal point on a lot of council comments. So there's been a lot of changes to that to accommodate. They've offered a lot more views. The designs are a bit more well fleshed out. And they also made some tweaks to how to enhance kind of like the rocket theme. So the focal point is now less on that grandiose shade structure that we were all kind of wowing about, but it drew more of the design focus on the playground itself, which I think both Councilmember Sternquist and I thought was a good change. So we did have some comments on giving them maybe more specifics on narrowing down some of the options to bring back to council. So that's what we will be meeting on this later this week, and we are on schedule to bring that back to full council first meeting of September, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything you'd like to add?
Just that these illustrations gave us that wow factor that I think we were looking for.
Yes, I completely agree, because I think that was one of our comments was
For both parks?
when,
Yes.
Okay.
because that was one of our comments was we were looking at the options for Live Oak, and all of us kind of said, well, this one didn't really give us the wow factor, so we kind of defaulted to the other one. And a lot of the comments related to Temple City Park were also addressed,
Yes.
although those were a lot easier to handle. So we were
Thank you,
very
Lynn.
pleased. Any other reports?
No.
Committees? No? Okay. All right, items separate from the regular agenda. Councilmember, we'll start, Councilmember Vistara.
I don't have anything further.
Councilmember Yu.
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Sternquist.
No, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
No, nothing, thank you.
For me, I'll just be really quick. I do want to, again, congratulate Captain Meza. I know for those of you who attended National Night Out, you probably had a chance to meet him officially now as the new captain for Temple Station. And if you were at the concerts, we also had a chance to publicly recognize him. And of course, we had the fire chief and assistant fire chief there as well. And also shout out and thanks to Assembly Member Mike Fong for also coming that evening and also presenting a certificate to Captain. So that was very much appreciated. And for tomorrow, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the last concerts in the series? That's the last one?
sir.
Okay. So for those of you, that went by fast.
Yes.
That was in the blink of an eye. So if you haven't been to one, this is your last chance this year to attend. Thursday is Neighborhood Watch at Live Oak Park. Okay? So if you haven't caught one, that's your opportunity to do so. And that's it for my report.
William,
Yes.
I believe that I saw it on Facebook that the Relay for Life group is actually doing something at intermission tomorrow. And so it's an open invitation for anyone who's interested in Relay for Life to come out. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I know they're handling intermission tomorrow.
Yes. I think someone mentioned that to me as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes. So please, if you're at the concerts, stay for the intermission. Relay for Life is something that we as a city have supported for many years, and we encourage you to continue to support them. All right, and we have our next item is the recess to the successor agency. So we will now recess to that, and I'd like to call that to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Agency Member Sternquist.
Here?
Agency Member Vizcarra.
Here.
Agency Member Yu.
Here.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Here.
Chairman.
Here. Next, we have the consent calendar. We have a motion for the
I
consent.
move it.
Second.
Moved in second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Agency Member Sternquist.
Yes.
Agency Member Vizcarra.
Yes.
Agency Member Yu.
Yes.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have none. Communications, we have none. Public comments. Seeing no public comments, we'll close public comments. Update from Executive Director and Agency Council. Seeing none. Matters from agency members. Also seeing none. We adjourn back to the original, regular meeting. It's getting late. And now we have additional public comments. Final call. Seeing none. Then we are adjourned. Have a good night.